Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Albert Breer?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad math out there for you guys. I mean, I was 3 or 4 weeks old for the Miracle on Ice, so that one's a natural for me. And then I have played that game. I think it was Brockman that you were saying, like where you play this movie is this old.
Yes.
Yeah, now go backwards.
And then that movie was that old back then, and that's a really dangerous game to play. That'll make you feel ancient.
I know.
I can't believe Old School's 19 years old.
19 years old. I saw that in the commercial break. I'm like, I cannot believe Old School is almost a 20-year-old movie.
That's nuts. I mean, and I actually, what I was immediately thinking was, now am I older than the guys in Old School? I think I am. Right? Because I think those guys were supposed to be in their 30s, right? Is that right?
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, we're all older than them now.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty depressing.
Okay, Albert, let's jump into this with both feet. What is going on with the Combine right now? Because that's going down. I'm at the Combine a week from tomorrow, getting ready to call that thing on NFL Network. Am I going to have 180 fewer people to discuss on NFL Network?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, Rich, because I think there are a couple things that the players are taking issue with here. And to be honest, I've talked to some teams, too, that aren't happy about it. And really, what a lot of this is about is notice. That the players are finding out about this a week ahead of time. They're really upset about it. And the agents are upset about it. And so the biggest issue really is that, for 2-3 months, every one of these prospects, the top guys, the guys who are invited to Indianapolis, have these teams of people around them, right? So you have your nutritionist, you have your strength coach, you have your speed coach, you have all of these different guys. And the big agencies bring those guys to Indianapolis so they can continue to work with those guys while they're going through the Combine. And you and I have seen this for years. I mean, in the convention center, you'll see a guy late at night working on his starts with his speed coach in the hallways of the convention center, getting ready to run the 40 the next day. That's a common sight. And so, basically what the bubble is going to do to these kids is it's going to remove them from that environment they've been in for the last 2 or 3 months by taking all of these specialists that they've hired away from them. And I think that's a huge problem. The nutrition part of it's a huge problem. And I just think a lot of the agents and the players themselves feel like they're not being put in a position to perform at the highest level, and they're being put in this position with almost no notice. And so I think that's why it's going the way it's going. And you have a handful of power broker agents that represent a relatively large percentage of the players threatening to pull their guys out. And I think the question is going to become, your Aiden Hutchinsons, your Evan Neals, your Kayvon Thibodeaux, those guys can probably just unilaterally decide I'm not going, and it probably won't affect them much. The guys who are put in the real difficult position, I'd say, are the second, third, fourth round picks who really have something to lose or gain. And that's where I think these kids are in a really, really difficult position. And it'll be interesting to see what the league does to work through this. But I will say this, more than one team's pointed out to me the hypocrisy in the NFL lifting so many restrictions so it could get the Super Bowl played, yet doubling back here and putting a lot of those restrictions on kids that really don't have any power to fight it outside of this potential boycott.
The interesting thing is this is part and parcel of the Combine becoming a bigger televised event.
Yep.
Is that now there's more and more people who are in the world of getting players and prospects ready for the Combine, and it's a cottage industry now.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And so players and agents are now used to having a certain way to prepare for it. And if that's being denied these players, then maybe they'll just wait for their pro days and not go to the Combine, or just only do the medical part of it, which I think they're having a problem with as well. Walk me through that. Do all 32 teams have their specific team doc? So literally a prospect goes through 32 medical evaluations at the Combine? That still happens?
It doesn't quite happen that way, but there are. I mean, they do. And I've written about this before, and I'm drawing a blank on the exacts, but it works in pools, and everybody's got a chance. The team doctors have a chance to talk to the kids, and so like some of it is definitely pooled. They're not going through 32 physicals, but like they'll get in a room, and there'll be. I think the number is something like 6 or 7 team doctors there that are sort of working as like almost like pool reporters on what's happening, and then that information shared. So yeah, the 30. I mean, and I think you and I both know this, Rich. Like that's the most important part to the teams, right? Like is the medical information, and that was the biggest thing last year was making sure that there was access to the medical information. The stuff that we all hype up. Us at Sports Illustrated, you guys certainly at NFL Network, the 40, the bench. I mean, that's sort of down the list. For the teams. What the teams really want is the medical information and then the interviews, and so if, like players aren't going to go through some of that, that's a real problem for each of the teams. And then, you'd be talking about getting into the spring when you have an opportunity to bring in guys for visits. And now all of a sudden, like the individual visits would become very, very important, and teams would have to be, real calculating about who they bring into their building to do those visits because, those visits are where you can get the individual physicals with the individual players.
Albert Breer, the MMQB here on the Rich Eisen Show. And the new league, everything is so condensed now because that extra week, I'm beginning to feel it for the first time. Normally it's a bit of a while between the end of the Super Bowl and the Combine. And then the Combine to the new league year. But now we're on and cracking. And I know that there's no, everyone feels it's the downtime or a down period, but this is when Rodgers is going to supposedly start making a decision. This is when we will maybe hear more about what's going on with Kyler Murray. Let's take both of those right now, since those are the linchpins in a way of just how crazy this quarterback carousel might spin over the next month. Albert.
Yeah, the key day really is March 16th, which is the start of the league year, the start of free agency, and that's when teams' plans start to crystallize. And so, like, that's the really important checkpoint. That said, I think we both know that there can be a domino effect, and one quarterback comes off the market, and then, like that could lead to another team saying, okay, like, well, now we got to make our move for our guy last year. Matthew Stafford, that deal wasn't executed until the middle of March, the beginning of the league year, but it was agreed to before the Super Bowl. And the Carson Wentz deal, I believe, was already done at this juncture in the calendar last year as well. And so, it's going to sort of be, where's the first domino? And it just feels to me like Rodgers is going to be the first domino. Now, here's how you want to look at this. Yeah, I really feel like the personal part of the relationship between Rodgers and the Packers has been taken care of and is in a much better place than it was last year. He publicly thanked Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst, the two guys he had the biggest problems with last year, in his MVP speech. And I know the Packers feel like the personal issue that Rodgers had with them is if not gone, in a much better place than it was last year. And I think, if you look the way it went last year, there was a period, I hate to use the kids' term ghosted, but there was a period of a month or two there where the Packers literally couldn't get a hold of Aaron Rodgers. So they're not there anymore. I think now what it's going to come down to with Rodgers is the professional part of it. Can they convince Aaron Rodgers that they'll be able to manage their cap issue? They're about $40 million over, project to be that far over, and put the same sort of team around him they've put around him over Matt LaFleur's first 3 years. So I think they've eliminated the personal issue, and now it's going to come down to whether or not Aaron Rodgers thinks the best thing for him professionally is to be in Green Bay.
So then before we jump to Kyler, so the Jordan Love, we've got to get him in there because we drafted him and the clock is ticking and we absolutely need to know who we have in him. That's done. Two back-to-back MVPs have effectively neutralized the drafting of Jordan Love, you believe?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way you want to look at it, it's similar to Brady and Garoppolo in New England, where Brady just basically kept beating Garoppolo out, and look, like I think that was the first quarterback Bill took in New England where the intention was this is going to be Brady's successor. And Brady was just so good over the period of time that they had Garoppolo on a rookie contract that the timing didn't work. And so they wind up trading Garoppolo to San Francisco. It wasn't that they didn't like Jimmy. They thought Jimmy could be their starting quarterback. It was just that the timing didn't work because Brady was able to sustain success. And I think the same sort of thing is playing out now in Green Bay. So, yeah, I mean, my guess would be, I think if they can find a way to keep Rodgers based on the state of their roster, how many guys they have in the prime of their careers, I think they'd be all ears if teams started to call and made offers on Jordan Love. I think that's the point they're probably at now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Kyler Murray.
But again, I want to emphasize when I say that, that's contingent on Rodgers.
Of course. I know that. It takes two to tango, but the fact was that there was no tango, as you pointed out. There was no dance. Right. There was no nothing because there was Jordan Love there, and the fact that's no longer the come heck or high water approach by the Packers when it comes to Rodgers, that it's okay. I guess you proved us wrong with the back-to-back MVPs. We're gonna stick with the program. If you're willing to stick with it, then that's a change. That's a definite shift.
And there are some moving parts there too. I mean, I think that would be contingent on him signing an extension. But if they sign him to say a 2-year, $100 million extension, let's just throw that out there, and it's fully guaranteed, and that helps them manage their cap issue. Well, then how does the timing work out with Jordan Love? And then you're basically saying Jordan Love's never going to be our starting quarterback because his rookie deal is going to be up before Rodgers is out of his guaranteed money.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's move on to Murray. What the hell, man? I mean, what's happening? I guess it's quiet now, but quiet always means something's up. That always means something's up.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of where you are with these young quarterbacks, and when they're on their rookie deals, and really the first kind of critical point is after year 3. That's when they're eligible for a new deal. That's when the team has to make a decision on the 5th-year option, which is obviously a big deal now because those are fully guaranteed now. They weren't in the old CBA, and so I think for the Cardinals, there was some stuff from a leadership standpoint that left them wanting, and so I don't know if Kyler actually went to the Cardinals looking for an extension, but I do think that there's, a leadership question there and being the guy for them where, you can ask that question and say, is he the guy that we're willing to pay $45 or $50 million a year for? And I don't know if they have that question answered yet. Maybe they want to see a little bit more over a 4th year. And if that's your answer there, well, then to me, I think it sort of brings up to me would bring up the question of, how's the player going to take that? And if you're Kyler Murray, you might not take that very well. So I think that's sort of where they are. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you work that out. A lot of times things get really awkward in year 4. We saw with Cleveland and Baker Mayfield, right? Cleveland didn't want to commit to Baker yet, and things definitely got pretty awkward in his 4th year there. I think if they're going to go forward with Kyle, and I don't have any indication that they aren't at this point, I think it could be a pretty awkward thing because, this is, again, sort of the point where, all players, but quarterbacks in particular, are looking for their big payday. And to be fair to Kyler, the history shows, I mean, you look at Goff and Wentz in the 16 class, Watson and Mahomes in the 17 class, Allen in the 18 class. The guys that teams are really sure about, those guys get extended after year 3.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Earlier on Monday, Kevin Colbert, the outgoing general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers, talked to the media. He was asked what the signing of Brian Flores to be the defensive assistant, as well as the defensive assistant coach, and then there's linebackers coach. Asked what does the hiring mean? He said it means we hired an excellent coach. So I'll ask you what it means, Albert. What does that mean?
I think it's a really good sign that Mike Tomlin's looking to inject new ideas into his building. And again, hiring a really good coach, and I think one of the things that Flo will bring is a different set of eyes to the operation. And I think Terrell Austin, the new defensive coordinator, does that too with his Baltimore roots. But what Brian Flores will do is sort of, I think, bring the idea that maybe they don't have to be the way they've always been. Pittsburgh's been defensively always the sort of team that will try to dictate terms to an offense. Whereas, where Flores is coming from, the New England background is you change from week to week based on what your opponent does well and what your opponent's presenting you. And so I think, in that way, Brian Flores is going to be able to bring a fresh set of ideas, a fresh set of eyes to everything Pittsburgh does. I think the Steelers will benefit from that. The other part of it that I really like is just the talent development aspect of it. He was so good in New England as far as developing talent, both young and old. When he was a linebackers coach, I think Kyle Van Noy and Dante Hightower were at their best. When he was a safeties coach, he helped transition Devin McCourty from a corner to safety in a position that he wound up being all-pro at, resurrected Patrick Chung's career, developed Ron Harmon. So that's the other part of it. It's going to be interesting to see what this means for younger players or even veteran players. Like guys like T.J. Watt, I think will benefit from it. But then your younger guys like your Devin Bush and your Minka Fitzpatrick, I think stand to really benefit from it as well.
And then the lawsuit aspect of it, what about that?
Well, the lawsuit aspect of it, I don't think – I know this. Brian Flores is a pretty principled guy, and my guess is that any sort of discussion of the lawsuit was broached by Mike Tomlin before this. And I think, I can't imagine this is going to affect Brian Flores' stance on that because he is a principled guy. And, I mean, look, Rich, here's the thing, too. If there's one ownership family that's going to support him, in this sort of thing, who is it? The Rooney family, right? So I don't think that should be lost on anybody either.
Well, I mean, if there's an opportunity to put a GoPro on Art Rooney walking into the owners' meeting when that happens in March and seeing Stephen Ross, I would pay for that. I'd pay for that right now. I mean, and seriously, like, okay, so you hire the guy that accuses me of tanking, or giving him 6 figures to tank. I wonder how that's going to sit.
Here's what's interesting about it, though, Rich, is like, I don't know if you noticed during the change of tone in the press conference from Roger last week. I don't think, and I've been covering the league 17 years. I can't remember him ever openly talking about ousting an owner, let alone like going into the process of it. You know what I mean? And whether that affects Snyder or Ross or whoever else. I definitely took note of the fact that Roger was openly talking about what it would take to take a team away from an owner. Because I don't think that's something he would have done 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that tells you a little something about where things are in the ranks of owners now, where maybe there are some owners that aren't happy with the way other owners are operating. And, maybe Roger feels like if it does come to the point where he does have to take out an owner, whether, again, it's a Snyder or a Ross or whoever, like maybe he actually has the support to do something like that. That's just my read on it. Like, again, like reading the tea leaves and having done this as long as I have, I don't know anything concrete on it, like that he would have that support, but it just sort of feels that way based on the way he talked last week.
Albert, thanks for the time. Sounds like you got your hands full too.
Yeah,
you're a good man.
School vacation week, so we're going to the Bruins game now, and we got caught in traffic, so the timing didn't work out great. But we made it work. I hope I was okay.
You were great. You were great. You lit the lamp, like I hope the Bruins will for you and your family.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Albert. You're the best.
And I didn't even bring up Juwan Howard. So how about that?
Well, you're around kids. Don't do that. Don't throw hands when you're around children. Okay.
No, we're gonna keep our hands to ourselves.
No, I saw that you said Woody Hayes is off the hook, as if that's in any way, shape, or form in the same area code.
You know what's funny about that is how many people took that seriously. That tweet was, you know me, I was just messing around.
You put it out, but you put it out there. I put it out there.
How many? I was obviously joking. I mean, this is something that happened in the '70s, and my God, the amount of people that thought I was serious about that is mind-blowing.
Albert, there's no joking on Twitter. You're aware of this.
No. Don't apply Twitter to Albert like that. Albert, you have a reputation of being a troll. You know that.
I was trolling, but at least recognize that I'm trolling. Like some people were acting like I was dead serious.
You need a troll font.
I was trolling.
You need a troll font.
Troll font.
There needs to be a troll font.
It could be like Comic Sans, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll talk about Cleveland in the All-Star game very shortly. Thank you for the call, Albert. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, Rich.
That's Albert Breer heading to the Bruins game with his kids.
There's fighting at hockey games, so maybe he was just getting ready.
Oh, my gosh. Michigan's a boxing school now, says Mike Del Tufo. Well done.
Good hockey school.
Who'd you see that on Twitter and you stole it from?
I made that up on my own.
Okay.
100%. And I'd admit if I got it from
Thank you very good.
I did not steal
Thank you
that.
very little. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.